All right, all right, all right. Name that movie. Uh, Once again, welcome to the Yellow Coat Club podcast. My name is Sean Little, and today we are going to be talking about stepping into the future. I know that the last, couple of podcasts that I've done have been really around this idea of this stepping into a future and a world that we cannot yet see. I think so easy, and just to kind of recap, some of the messaging is this idea that, we fixate on what is seen, and based on what is seen, we allow that to determine and dictate the future. I heard something really inspiring and pretty incredible this week. I was listening to Pastor Erwin McManus, one of his old sermons, but he essentially was talking about, and he said that the thing you have is actually your biggest limiting factor because you assume what you have is what God has. And so even thinking of, that statement is this idea of like, if it's something that I can see, then it's attainable. So he even gives the metaphor. He goes, if you have $10,000, you think you have $10,000 to spend. But when you believe in this infinite possibility, this future that we cannot yet see, then we're able to step into something far greater than that $10,000 or the resource that we have at that time. And so, that has been on the forefront of my mind. And about a couple of weeks ago, I was with some members of my team that I'm currently on, and we were looking into a communications calendar for the rest of the year, like really trying to fine tune strategy and branding and messaging and audiences and you name it. And one of the exercises or things that we did was we had these three questions. What are things that we need to stop doing? What are some things that we need to continue doing? And what are some things that we need to start doing? Because I think, so often people, it's almost like this hoping, this wishy-washy hope that the future will, happen. And if the future turns out, the way that you want it to, and you're wishy-washy about it, and you're not really, strategic and moving forward and being intentional with that time, then it's almost like as Bob Ross said, it's like it's a happy accident. And so, it encourages us to say, hey, like we need to step into the future and not be passive about our lives. And inside of that is this reality that, so often the thing that keeps us trapped, the thing that we all need to stop doing is being driven by stories that may or may not be true. And I know I've covered that in previous podcasts, and I covered that in my book, The Yellow Coat Club, is talking about how stories drive so many things that we do, and yet, our stories are not rooted in reality. I heard in the last couple of weeks that it's so interesting that, there's this dichotomy between faith and fear, or faith and anxiety. And it was crazy to hear. It's like, no, it's all faith. It's just either faith that God can, or faith that this thing that I don't know about is going to happen. Usually it's not something you want. You're anxious about it. You're, living in fear of it, but it all requires faith. It just, where are you going to put your faith in? And so, um, we, as we move into this future, we have to be able to ask that question of like, what am I taking with me? you know and also examining what I currently have and going, this doesn't suit me anymore. Imagine you're going to go on a backpacking trip. My wife and I have us and our son, we're going to be moving for a little bit to Holland, Michigan over the summer, and through fall. We've talked about potentially going abroad, and so this idea of moving is, I mean, really, it comes to reality is like, what stuff are we taking with us? What are we leaving behind? And so we're gonna take a vehicle up to Holland, Michigan, and so it's what can fit in that vehicle. But if we're gonna go to abroad to another country, it's not what can fit in that vehicle. It's what can fit in the pack, knowing that the things that need to come with you, you have some essentials. Got to bring the child. I'm going to strap it to my chest. but but in all reality, we have to assess those things. Like, hey, I've picked these things up along the way, and I need to continue doing them. And then there's the examining of going, I picked this habit, or this friend, or this place that I've been going that isn't serving us anymore. And then it's also that reality of like, how do we what do we need to start doing today to step into that future? um and so one of the questions that I really love asking, and that I've had to ask myself, is this concept of, who do you want to be in 1 year? Who do you want to be in 3 years? Who do you want to be in 5? And wherever you look at where you're at today, and what doesn't align or match up with that 1, 3, 5 year projection and beyond, you must ask and answer the question, what can I start doing today to already show up like that person? Because, you know, by the time that comes, if I don't start doing that today, and it's not going to happen unless it's by accident, you know? But I would rather start living my life today like the person that I want to be. The one that believes that there are the resources available, that if God wills it, if God casts the vision, that I'm literally there to follow and move forward and step forward in faith. And so it's this creating an identity even before, what we've become or what we've attained. And in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he says the most effective way to change behavior is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. And I just absolutely love that, because we have to ask, who are we becoming? I mean, I wrote the entire book, The Yellow Coat Club, on this concept of the becoming, that it never stops, that we're constantly stepping into a future, that we're creating that future. Who I was is not who I am today, or at least I hope to God it's not. And who I am today and the capacity I have today, if I continue to keep pushing forward, if I continue to keep moving forward, then my capacity will look much different then. My dream today might seem small then. And so as we move and step into that future, and we talk about this intentionality, we step in going, we have to do that assessment. We have to look at where we were at. you know we want new outcomes, we want new commitments, we want all of this new, but this almost unwillingness to change. And I remember the times in my life where I stepped out most in faith were these moments where I was willing to do the hard work of letting things go and leaving certain parts of the past behind so I could step into a future that I could not see yet. When I started going to AA and was on that road to recovery and getting sober, I remember I was at this one AA club in the north side of the town I was living in, and I'm sitting there, and I was still new to the tables, and there are people that have been there for a really long time, and so if you've ever been around you know the AA tables, or even just recovery, that whole setting, there's lots of phrases that people use, and you kind of hear them, and either they resonate with you or you become numb to them, because you're like, oh, it feels like it's a robotic thing. And I remember somebody was talking, and he said, in order for me to get to where I am today, in order for me to quit the thing that was driving my life, i.e., in order to stop drinking, I had to stop playing with fire. And for him, how he expressed it was, I had to change my play places, my playthings and my playmates. And I remember hearing that and thinking, man, one of the things that I was struggling with so much is this almost double life where I I believed that I could be normal. So I had this belief, and by normal I mean just drinking, not, fall into just this pit and hole of despair. Like, there's people that can have a drink and stop. I was not that person. Um, Never was that person. One met five. Um, but so, in that setting, I heard this and I realized that one of the things I had to give up was even this belief that I could go back to the way things were. That maybe I could drink freely one day and not be a problem. I had to let that go. I also had to let go of relationships, and even I ended up moving from a city that, I was 2 doors down from, my best friend at the time. And I was living in a city that I just, every single memory I had was around alcohol. And my life revolved around it. That's that's what I did. And honestly, there was this moment where, I had remembered, there was a girl that I had dated, in my early 20s, and her dad was an alcoholic, and he had, eventually passed away. And she had told me a story where she had pleaded with him to stop, and he just looked at her and said, I don't actually know who I am without it. And it was interesting because I had gotten to that place. I didn't know how to hang out with people. I didn't know the city around me. I didn't. And for me, the thing that I needed to do was I needed a new environment. I needed to be somewhere else. And what hurt is, I ended up leaving, friends behind. Um, but I had to. I had to. As I've shared before, I ended up, around COVID or a little bit after the height of COVID, I felt called to go serve as a missionary in Mexico. And in that, there was that calling of, if it didn't fit in my Honda Fit, it didn't go. And so I left things of the past behind. But I knew that there was a future that was waiting for me. And I remember always saying to people, I said, if I don't go, I will always wonder what would have been. And I don't want to live that life of wondering what would have been. Now, there's certain things, don't get me wrong here. There are things in your life where it's just better that you don't know what they are. Um, you know, don't, you don't go trying cheating on your spouse. Be like, I wonder what cheating feels like, like just don't do that. you know there's drugs that you haven't done. Yeah, you don't need to go figure that out. Like, it just, there's certain things, just trust me on that. But when that call feels almost undeniable and you have this tension in yourself of, I either step into the future or I will always either live in regret or just wonder what would have been. My soul stirred, but I'm too afraid to step forward. I think you should do it. If you ever want to chit chat about it, hit me up, man, because I feel like I've got an itch for stepping into that future that I can't see. And there's this scripture in Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19 that says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." And while that is true, we have to be an active participant in stepping into that which is new. And so that freedom requires us to change. It requires to move forward and to get almost to this idea that, like, we retreat isn't an option. Looking at those things where it's like, oh, I just want to bring it with me. I just, it becomes this safety net. It becomes this crutch, and this idea is like, no, 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 no. You need to leave that behind. Even as I talk about it now, I think, and people have experienced this in different levels where it's like leaving a bad relationship and then, things not working out and you're like, well, maybe it wasn't so bad. You get the rosy colored eyes. And so you try to like go back and you're like, why did I ever think that was going to work out? Um, we don't need to go back. And so there almost becomes this thing that we need to do and going, how do I set that how do I set that past on fire so there is no retreat? Like when we decide that's a thing I need to leave behind, these are the things I need to keep doing, then that's what I need to do. That's the future I'm stepping into. We need to not give ourselves an out to retreat to the thing that we know we have to leave behind. I wasn't going back to drinking. I couldn't. That life would only lead to death. And so I had to uproot it completely. It wasn't oh yeah, you could come visit later. Like, no, just go. There's this story that I've heard two sides. I've heard that it's true and I've heard that it's misquoted. Regardless, the concept still is the same. So there's this, it was the Spanish Armada, Cortés, and they land. They come to land and they have all this fleet of ships and they're going to end up, going to war and into battle and everything. And the ships, while they were on land, they could run to the ships and they could hightail it on out of there. And as the legend goes, or at least it's attributed to this, is that Cortez literally went down to the ships and set them all on fire and made a direct assurance that our escape plan is no longer. How many of us need to set the ships on fire? James Clear again in Atomic Habits, he says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What systems in our life, what escape routes have we given ourselves that we need to start weeding out, the things that we need to start dialing back and going, no, this isn't going to lead me into this future. What thoughts, what beliefs, what people. You ever notice how misery loves company? You can always find a group of people that want to share in that misery with you and complain. But how many of us are surrounding ourselves with people that will challenge us, that will hold up the mirror in front of us when we need to say, okay, I hear you, but why don't you look in here? I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to, cast the stone at you, but I'm not going to allow you to accept less than this. Because interestingly enough, and we might each have a person, I can think of a few in my life, where it's like week after week after week, all you hear is the same story. Oh yeah, this, and you're like, I feel like I'm living in a Freaky Friday moment, like deja vu, where I could come back and play the tape and go, this was last week and the week before and the week before. Have you thought about trying something new, something different? Because it doesn't seem like you're getting the results that you want. And altogether, people might say, oh, I keep doing the same thing. And there's another group going, yeah, I gave up. Well, you're still complaining about it. So that's fun. And so these beliefs that they become limiting factors in our lives, even just that notion of believing I can't do blank. Think about how many self-defeating thoughts that you might have in a single day. I know that I resonate with that completely. I have been run by a script of not being enough so long. And it's interesting because most of the times that I feel myself getting riled up, it can almost be equated back to feeling like somebody is talking to me like I'm small or, I didn't perform or I'm not good enough or something. And it's always around this not being enough most of the time. And at some point, it's like, hey, what When are you going to transcend and fight back and believe in the identity that when you are told that you are enough, when you have your identity rooted in your Heavenly Father, that you are enough, when are you going to get it through that you are? Because as long as that belief persists, as long as we believe that, oh, I'm never going to be able to attain this thing or move beyond my circumstances, then the chances you probably will not. Because that kind of energy, you already show up defeated. Dr. Andrew Huberman says that beliefs shape perception, and perception shapes belief. And I think that it's almost like having this pair of glasses on. And how I see the world is how I'm going to perceive my ability to maneuver through it. And if all I see are limits in my mind, then I'm going to live in a limited world. Remember the analogy at the very beginning. If I have $10,000, then I only see what I can do with $10,000. And because I can only see what I can do with that $10,000, I then act in such a way where I only have $10,000. Now, I'm not saying that you should be like, oh, well, I only have $10,000, so I'm going to go put a Ferrari on credit. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is that we so often, when we think about a call, all of this comes back rooted to where is God calling you to step into a future? Because if God is calling you to step into a future that you cannot see, it doesn't matter what you got in your hands. This all presupposes that we're moving in that direction, we're becoming, and that becoming is becoming who God created each and every one of us to be. God didn't create you for you to think that you're a piece of crap. God didn't create you for you to live small. God didn't create you for you to walk around as if you are the world's greatest victim. That is not what we were created for. But so many of us, because we don't even have that belief, it becomes this giant limiting factor. And so the question is, what story is driving your life right now that is writing your future? What story right now has told you this is all you'll ever attain, this is all you'll ever do, and therefore you have already chosen the end of your life and you're in your 30s, 40s, and you're just counting the years. This is all I'm ever gonna do. Unless a happy accident comes along. I think about even that mentality, that old mentality of, oh, I've been at the company for 20 years. And so, I deserve to get promoted. And yet you watch somebody who's been there for 5 get promoted above you and you're filled with anger. And yet their performance, their drive, their genius, constantly pushing the envelope forward. We should stop comparing ourselves to other people, but we should start comparing ourselves to who we used to be and setting that bar and moving it forward and moving it forward and moving it forward. That consistent progress, that consistent moving forward that leads to the change, that leads to the results, they will come. We end up living in this world that we want everything to just be handed to us. We don't want to work hard for it. Think about how many get rich, quick schemes are out there. Oh yeah, that's easy money, man. That's easy money. Just do this thing. I got you. We have become so conditioned to think that it should be handed to us. I mean, we're getting to the point where we don't have to drive our cars. Shoot, you can pull up AI and not even think. It'll do it all for you. And yet there's so much research around this notion of use it or lose it. And that includes your capacity to creatively think, your capacity to think beyond what your eyes can see. So, will you potentially stay the same, which eventually means that you will start backsliding and regressing? Or what would it look like to examine what you are carrying today and say, what am I stopping? What am I continuing? And what do I need to start doing to step into this future? Because God is not limited by what we can't do. He even points this clearly out in Scripture. It says in Matthew 19:26, with man this is possible, but with God all things are possible. And I know that there's people listening to this right now that they're like, I don't believe in God. Okay. And you might be high functioning, high capacity, and you could send something in and go, see, I've already broken everything that you've said right now. I'm the exception to the rule. And I almost smirk as I'm saying that because I'm like, yeah. And what would your life look like if you gave it to the creator of the universe? What would your life look like if you put all that you already have in the hands of the one who has all? Bound by nothing, limitless. Because what you're chasing after is maybe a dollar sign or your name on more buildings or more something. You might find that your calling is actually to go serve quietly in a village in Africa and exert your strength by bringing more people to freedom, providing water for those people. And you go, well, that's not what I want. There are so many people that have a lot and yet feel absolutely no peace. And I can at least say in my life that the times that I have walked and felt so close to not only the call, but even that walk with Christ were the ones that I felt the most peace, that it was undeniable. I'm like, I should be terrified right now. Like, I am naturally an anxious person. That is, I mean, I lean anxious. I would love to say that I'm not, and I have come to accept the fact that I'm an anxious person. And so when I think of a future where I'm making moves right now with my wife to leave our house and, don't have, the job lined up and, just got a place that we're going to stay for the summer. And then eventually, hey, babe, we're going to, end up down in Texas and, we're going to go start something. We're building something. We're building something real big based on a vision that came to me. And yet I don't see it today. And yet there is so much peace. And all I can know is that that is the times when I can feel 100% certain that it's God breathed. For he even says, "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives." The world tells you that the more things you have peace. But if you don't have peace within, it doesn't matter what you have outside of you. You will not know that until you experience that peace within. And so as we step into this future, we continue to be creators of our future and this becoming and stepping in. There's this ability for us to celebrate the wins and also to keep asking that question, what else is possible? I follow athlete, business owner Nick Bear from Bear Performance Nutrition, and his stuff's really incredible and super inspiring. And he has this tagline that's just kind of like become very married to like him and his business, and it's just this go one more. And I know that towards the end of last year, I was starting to get just a little jaded with working out, and just most areas of my life, like I felt stagnant, maybe not regressing, but I started just meditating on this idea of going one more. Because there's this perception, this limit that, remember, the thing that I can see. And then it's like right beyond that thing that I can't see is the one more. So many people give up right at the edge of greatness. Or you go to the gym and you're like, well, I'm doing 10 reps. Well, who told you to only do 10? I bet you could do 11. But somehow we get to 10 and we just drop the weights. And so I've been approaching the gym with this mentality and this intensity of going, well, I'm gonna do the weight that I probably can only do 8 or 9, and when I get to that ninth one, I'm gonna go one more. Now, you could say that that's isolated to a gym, but it's really not, because where you train your mind and your body is where you start training yourself in the other avenues and the other areas of your life, because they're all connected. When we tell ourselves, oh, I don't have enough time, then you have even less time than you did before, because now the myth is anything that comes out, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I always love that one, because I want to look at people and just say, hey, well, give me your schedule. Let's look at time. Let's be honest about how we're spending our time. And what would it look like to go on more? What would it look like to start living the life that we dream of today? Remember, and I quote, very big disclaimer there. If you don't have the money for a very nice, expensive car, do not go put it on credit card and be like, well, that guy in the yellow coat said, start living the life. No. Who do you need to show up as? Where do you need to start pushing for? Where do you need to go one more? And where do you need to start leaving things behind? Because those are going to be the moments and the choices where you start stepping out into faith and stepping into a future that you could never possibly imagine. And I know as I continue to take these steps forward, and the planning keeps coming and the uncertainty arises, and I just submit it and put it forward, hands open, going, I'm just going to trust that if I keep taking the next step, if I keep planning and walking in this purpose and being able to pivot and listening to the voice that says, follow me, I might not end up at that exact thing that I thought of, but I will end up somewhere that is far different than where I am today. It's like that famous quote. I don't know who it came from, but it says, shoot for the moon, because if you don't hit it, you'll land among the stars. And that's what I want to do. I might not hit that final target, but I will not stop aiming. I will not stop shooting. And hey, if I don't land on the moon, at least I will land among the stars. So thank you for joining me again. I really enjoy this time. Hopefully it's an encouragement to you. These are the things that I spend my time thinking on, where my head seems to live these days. And I'm excited to witness the other people in my life's becoming as I witness my own. If there's ever a time you want to connect, I'm on, LinkedIn and, all the social platforms, and And we have a website and would love to connect with you and just hear about how you are stepping into the becoming. Um, it's a beautiful journey, not an easy one, but we were never promised easy. Till next time, thanks for joining, and I'll see you soon.